Hello everybody, and welcome to the Daily Splat. Now then, today is the first in our series of 20 Premier League team reviews. Of course, about 8 or 9 months ago there was the previews, where we had a 20 video series where basically each team was previewed and we'd see how they go, or at least we had a prediction, and now that season has concluded, so we can get straight into it, starting with, alphabetically, Arsenal. Now, I should state that my prediction for Arsenal last season, at the start of this season, where they would finish, was in second position. Now, this prediction was made 20 days before the start of the season, and this was when Arsenal still had a certain Cesc Fabregas and also a certain Samir Nasri playing for them, which, of course, by the end of the transfer window, they were no longer. So too was Gaël Clichy. Clichy and Nasri both joining the mega millions of Manchester City, while Cesc Fabregas returned to his boyhood club Barcelona. So, this all happened relatively late on in the transfer window. Indeed, Nasri left with a week to go, Fabregas leading with just a fortnight remaining of the transfer window. At this point, Arsenal had already brought in one signing in Gervinho, who was supposed to add more to the attacking lineup, but missing these crucial midfielders, Arsenal looked as though they were going to have a bit of a tricky season. Of course, there were promising youngsters in the team, but Jack Wilshere had an injury at the time, which is still going. He missed the entire season for injury. And of course, a midfield of Aaron Ramsey, Thomas Rosicky and Alex Song, whilst relatively solid, isn't going to win you trophies. However, obviously, time was short. Arsenal had the season started. They began with a 0-0 draw away at Newcastle. No shame. They, of course, drew 4-4 famously there the season before, and were unlucky to have debutant Gervinho sent off for Joey Barton's antics. So, yes, there you go. The following results were disappointing. A 2-0 loss at home to Liverpool, with some comical defending towards the end from Mikel, and then of course the third game of the season, a trip up to Manchester and the infamous 8-2 defeat at the hands of Manchester United. Now, whilst I enjoyed that fixture, of course, it was devastating for Arsenal fans, and of course it coming just a few days before the transfer window and just a couple of days after Samir Nasri had jumped ship and joined City, and in fact he made his debut that day as City thrashed Tottenham 5-1. Basically, things were looking very bleak. Arsene Wenger was being, it was a bit more of a suggestion that he should leave. However, over those final few days, Arsenal brought in 5 or 6 new players to try and stabilise the squad. Mikel Arteta coming in from Everton, of course, I think was a very good signing. Arsenal never won a game that he didn't play in until the very last game of the season away at West Brom. So obviously he was an integral part of that team, and of course he did very well for them over the season, and I think he's got a good future with them over the next 2 or 3 seasons. Other players that were brought in, Per Mertesacker, the lanky German, coming in and having a pretty positive impact, you'd have to say, although a little slow and laborious. He was very efficient, as you'd expect of a German footballer. Of course, the injury he picked up in February ended his season, and that was a shame for him because he was having a good first season. Other signings that came in, Andre Santos was brought in as at left back and decided not to play there. He decided to just keep attacking. I don't think he had that good a first season, but he also wasn't terrible. He too had quite a few injury problems, so it'll be interesting to see how he's played next season. Park Chu-young was also brought in to play up front and sort of never did because of the super form of Robin van Persie, which we'll get on into in a moment, but it was a bit of a disappointing arrival from him. And of course, Yossi Benayoun arriving on loan from Chelsea for the season. He was a squad player, but he played a bit more towards the end of the season, and I think, all in all, served his purpose well. So, it's a terrible start for Arsenal. However, they then managed to pick themselves up a bit. They had a couple more troubling results, losing 4-3 away at Blackburn, then of course losing the North London derby against Tottenham 2-1 at White Hart Lane. Wasn't looking good for the Gunners. 7 points from their opening 7 fixtures, not good, but then they went unbeaten for 8 games, would you believe? They suddenly found form, they tightened up at the back. We saw Lauren Koscielny start to actually develop into looking like he might be able to play professional football, and he was probably Arsenal's most improved player. An excellent season at centre-back for him, and no other defender played more games than Laurent. So a very good season for him. Of course, this season will be most well remembered by Arsenal fans for the extremely incredible performance of their captain, Robin van Persie. Van Persie ended up being the Premier League's top scorer over the whole season, and indeed he scored 35 goals in the calendar year of 2011. He finished the previous season in good form, carried it on into this. He got some cracking goals, most notably from the first half of the season, the volley against Everton that saw Arsenal win 1-0 at the Emirates. He was on fire. Alex Song was also playing well, and the two were combining. I remember them combining over a couple of goals in the Champions League, Arsenal finishing second in their group and progressing to the knockout stages as per usual. However, they did only finish second because, having already secured qualification ahead of the final game, they sent over a weakened squad but lost 3-1 to Olympiacos and meant that they would be in Pool 2. It meant that they would be up against an opposition who was probably stronger than you'd expect, than Arsenal would have hoped for, and they ended up being drawn against AC Milan, where they were promptly beaten 4-0 at the San Siro in the first leg. The tie was effectively over until half-time in the second leg, when Arsenal were 3-0 up, making it 4-3 on aggregate. However, they couldn't add another goal, and they were made to pay for their horrible performance at the San Siro. Similarly, around this time, just after Christmas, they were stuttering in the league, managing only 2 wins in 9 fixtures in between Christmas and February. And then, of course, there was the problem that they had with getting knocked out of the FA Cup. They were beaten by Sunderland in the 5th round. They were also knocked out of the League Cup by Manchester City, although both sides were playing reserve sides that day, so there wasn't too much to read into that. So it looked as though this season was going to be trophyless for Arsenal, but they picked themselves up and began to press on for points to secure themselves a top 4 finish. And they got another good run of results. They went 9 games unbeaten after the difficult Christmas period. Obviously Thierry Henry came in and gave them a bit of motivation. He then obviously went off back to America, and Arsenal had another good run. They won 8 of 9 games in this unbeaten run, and all was looking pretty rosy. Of course, they had that brilliant come-from-behind 5-2 win over Tottenham at the Emirates. So, there were some pretty good performances there. Oxlade-Chamberlain, who was another young player that had been brought in from Southampton for about £12.5 million, quite a big fee. He played excellently as he was introduced into the second half of the season, and obviously made Theo Walcott think, cripes, I'd better actually play well here, otherwise I could lose my spot. And Walcott came into form. This all benefited the team, and it got to the stage where, with 4 or 5 games to go, Arsenal were in 3rd spot. They were a few points clear of Tottenham and Newcastle, the chasing pack, and Chelsea, of course, the chasing pack for those Champions League points. And you thought, with 4 games to go, surely they'll be able to just cruise to a couple of easy wins and grab 3rd spot for themselves. Of course, everyone knew at this stage Chelsea were in the Champions League final, and that meant that you might need 3rd just to make sure you were in. They then drew their following 3 fixtures. 0-0 with Chelsea isn't disappointing. Chelsea are a good side. But there were some other disappointing draws. 1-1 with Stoke and 3-3 with Norwich. A very disappointing result for Arsenal at home at the Emirates, their final home game. It meant they had to go to West Brom on the final day of the season and win to secure 3rd spot. And in a game which was a bit topsy-turvy, they took the lead, got pulled back level, West Brom pulled level, then West Brom went ahead, and Arsenal went level, and eventually Lauren Koscielny got the winning goal for them. 3-2, they finished 3rd, and they're in the Champions League next season. Overall season mark, I'd have to give them a B, B+, probably actually, because they had a terrible start, and there's no way this was ever going to be an absolute A-class season. They didn't even get close to winning any silverware, to be perfectly honest. However, they did recover well, and they did play some very good football, and of course Robin van Persie was absolutely fantastic for them, but he was only fantastic because of the team around him, able to actually provide him stuff, even though he did pull them through the odd game by himself. So actually I'm going to give them a B overall for Arsenal, and of course next season, lots of interesting things coming up. Lucas Podolski already confirmed coming in. You've got Jarno Vila, who's probably going to be an Arsenal player. A couple more signings they'll be looking at, and of course the key thing, trying to hold on to Robin van Persie. Will they be able to do it? I don't know. I'd hope so. I think Arsenal have done as much as they can possible to keep Robin van Persie at the club. If he does go, it will almost certainly be for them dollar bills. Okay, that's all for today. Tune in tomorrow when we will be reviewing Aston Villa's season, and I'm afraid it's not going to be as cheery. They were very, very disappointing. Anyway, Aston Villa tomorrow. Make sure you stay tuned for that, and I'll talk to you all then. Till then, bye bye.